on screen. Turn your camera off now. Okay, this is the Arborist call for the 27th of June, 2024. We're going to start off with core team updates. We're then going to go through research and implementation updates, any announcements, and then any discussion. And we can, of course, end the recorded part of the call and continue off the record discussion if you want to. What are Arborist calls? These calls happen every 2 weeks, and they're a place for people who contribute to the Zcash protocol to come together to discuss upgrade timelines and process, give updates on the work that they're undertaking, and to coordinate on the design and implementation of new features, and generally collaborate to make Zcash better. The purpose of these calls, and the fact that they're recorded, and the fact that they're open to anybody to attend, and the fact that they're uploaded to YouTube, is to make the process, sausage making of Zcash protocol development more visible and transparent for the Zcash community at large. And it also provides a place where anybody who's interested in contributing to Zcash through protocol development can come and, first of all, learn about what's going on, and secondly, join the call and present on whatever it is that they are interested in working on. And if you want to do that, drop us an email at arboristcall@cfnd.org. And if you want to attend these calls on a regular basis, point your browser at zcasharborist.org, and there you will find the registration links. Other ways to get involved: you can apply for a Zcash community grant, which provides funding for independent teams who are looking to contribute to Zcash. There's also a Zcash R&D Discord that you can join to chat with other engineers in the Zcash ecosystem. And there's the Zcash Community Forum, which is where a lot of discussion, always spicy and exciting, takes place about Zcash and more, I guess, non-technical topics, particularly governance issues at the moment. And you can find, again, all these links by pointing your browser at zcasharborist.org. I'm just going to very quickly apologize in advance in case I drop off. Dan, please be ready to step in and take over if my computer gives up the ghost and crashes, which has happened in the past. I'm going to start off with core team updates, and we'll start off with the Zcash Foundation. Not sure, is Marek in the hot seat today?
Yeah, I'll be giving the update today. So in the last 2 weeks, we released a new version of Zcash script. It's a new minor version, and it doesn't depend on the Rust dependencies from Zcash anymore. And we're using it in Zebra, and we don't have to depend or keep the Libra Zcash dependencies in Zebra synchronized with Zcash anymore, thanks to this. So we updated the dependencies from Libra Zcash as well in Zebra. Then we fixed some tests for Windows, which allowed us to bring it back into the second tier of supported platforms. We merged a PR that drops transactions containing unpaid actions. We removed the scanner functionality from the ZebraD process. We have new documentation for custom testnets and rec test in flight, which we will merge pretty soon. And next week, we will be releasing Zebra 1.8, which will contain these updates plus the ones that we did in the past. That's pretty much it.
Any questions relating to Zebra?
Maybe I could clarify why we had to keep the dependencies from Libra Zcash synchronized with Zcash. The reason was that Zcash script used to depend on them through Zcash, and since we were using Zcash script in Zebra, I mean the Zcash script crate in Zebra, we had to keep Zebra's dependencies synchronized with Zcash through this convoluted pipeline. Yeah.
Any questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to ECC. And who is giving the update today?
Chris?
I'm always the one who does this. What?
Okay. I can do it today. Yeah, we've just been heads down working on Zip 320 basically. You want to give? Yeah, I'll do Zip 320, and Chris, can you do the commitment tree issue? Okay. So yes, basically just handling some corner cases. So today we found an issue with sort of how dust in the, so this is dust in the sense of notes and inputs that are less than the Zip 317 marginal fee. And we've just been discussing how those should be handled. Basically, there is some complicated code to calculate whether an input has economic value because it's either greater than the fee or can be included for free without increasing the fee. And so there's an interaction between that and Zip 320, which I'm working out today. But I think that it's very nearly ready to be merged, and the other things that are waiting for an SDK release are, so Chris will discuss the commitment tree changes, and Strad, can you do the RT support for querying exchange rates?
Yep. So with respect, so there had been previously a bug that was mentioned before on the Arborist call in note commitment tree management that was a corner case at shard boundaries. As part of the fix for that bug, I introduced an assertion that was that ended up due to other features of the note commitment tree was triggering in some cases where it did not actually represent an erroneous condition. And so I've been working to make it so that removing that assertion is possible, removing the assertion is the easy part, but then fixing up some other bits about how the distinction between actually observed subtrees and just subtrees for which we've inserted data that we got from somewhere else. They're just low-level details, but that's all complete and ready for review now. So that was the last other thing blocking the next SDK release apart from Zip 320 support. And hopefully, with that done, I can now focus on reviewing Strad stuff that gives us currency conversion support in the SDK, or at least the basis for currency conversion support.
Strad here.
Yep.
Okay.
So I may have described it in previous calls, but just as a resummary, we wanted to enable wallets to query the exchange rate between ZEC and USD to begin with, in a way that doesn't leak information to exchanges about that user that they don't necessarily want. So like if a user is using an exchange, well, then they're revealing their IP address to those exchanges, but we didn't want to require doing so just for getting a sense of what the fiat rate is. So the current PR that's up for doing that uses the RT library for fetching these over Tor. And it attempts to fetch from 3 data sources, and then takes a median of them, or gets the best result it can from the data sources it has. So the code for that's up there, and as I said, is waiting for review. The main issue that is currently being run into is that 3 data sources that I'm attempting to use right now are Binance, Coinbase, and Gemini. The response from Gemini is almost always good. The response from Binance is most of the time good, and then sometimes has some like 451 unavailable for legal reasons, or 403 unauthorized kinds of requests. But the Coinbase API, every time I have attempted to test this, has always returned a 400 kind of error, which implies that Coinbase is probably just blocking all Tor exit nodes as client IPs. So we're looking at whether there are ways that Coinbase can bypass that if the app authenticates at an app level in some way. But we're also going to look at some other possible data sources for exchange rates that we feel aren't immediately subject to like market manipulation. For instance, looking at potentially having one of the aggregators that exists as a potential data source there. But in any case, what it comes down to there is just having enough different data sources that then when you take, if we can reliably get 3, then we can reliably take a median, and it's going to be pretty consistently fine for usage. So at this point, it's literally just what data sources are accessible via Tor, and then reviewing that code, and that will then be accessible to anyone using the Zcash client backend Rust crate.
Any questions for ECC?
Sorry, can you repeat the last sort of roughly 10 to 15 seconds, because I missed it. Ali was distracting me.
The last 10 to 15 seconds was a summary of what I had just said. So
okay, cool.
If you heard that, then
fine.
yeah,
then I know everything.
Okay, let's move on to. Seem to have lost my. Oh, there's Zcash deprecation. Okay, don't know who wants to provide an update on this. Should probably formalize this a bit better, actually, because obviously it sits between ECC with ZF as well involved.
I can give a brief update from the Rust crates perspective, which is that we have merged Chris's PR that adds more parity between how shielded and transparent funds are represented in the Zcash client back and Zcash client SQLite layer. So we're not all the way towards essentially the backend wallet being able to do the same kinds of transparent spends as Zcash, but we're a big step forward towards that now, which will be necessary for the wallet work.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing that we had done during the last 2 weeks. That it's done now, so I forgot that. I only remember the incomplete stuff.
Same.
And can anybody on the ZF side provide an update on the Zebra scanner separation? Arya?
Alfredo is working on moving the tests. ZebraScan is mostly separated at this point into its own binary, and we've begun working on the indexer RPCs to support the replacement wallet on ZF side.
Okay. Any questions? No, let's move on to research and implementation updates. I'll start off this week with Frost.
Hi everyone. This past 2 weeks, I think the main thing is that we released the 200 RC0 release of the Frost crates. This has a bunch of breaking changes. It has a simplification of the serialization API, which I think makes it much simpler to serialize things. It supports no STD, so if you need Frost in some embedded environment or something like that, you can do that. Just one surface suite that does not support it, which is add 448. And another, some small API changes, adjustments that since we're going to do a breaking release, we might as well do those cleanups. So if you're a user of Frost, take a look into 200 RC0. If you have any feedback, please provide us, and we'll, in the next month, at some point in next month, we'll do the final 200 release. We also keep working on the refresh shares functionality, which is very close to be finished, and on the Frost server, which is the thing we're working on to help people use Frost, to help them communicate with each other. I'm working on adding user registration, because if you have user registration, it makes it easier for people to find the other persons and download public keys, stuff like you need to authenticate connections and so on. So yeah, we have a very simple proof of concept on this, and we'll keep iterating on that. And yeah, I think that's it.
Any questions relating to Frost? Let's move on to trailing finality. Any updates there, Dara?
Nope, none whatsoever.
Nope. Okay. Moving swiftly on, Zcash Sustainability Fund. And
Yeah, I
Tomek,
can
you-
give an update on that.
Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, so the work on the ZSF has resumed in the last couple of weeks. What I've been working on recently is updating the Libra Zcash to update the transaction IDs and Zcashes and transaction read, transaction write methods to include the ZSF deposit field. I'm doing all of that behind the Zcash unstable Rust flag, so similar to the ZFuture one that's already there. Yeah, I've been also updating the Zcash test vectors because this is something I discovered that exists just a couple of days ago, but I guess it needs to be updated as well, so that the test data for transactions that include a ZSF deposit field are also generated. So yeah, I guess that's that.
Any questions relating to the Sustainability Fund?
Yes. So I saw in the forum, I think it might have been you post that you're targeting early 2025. Is that correct?
Well, that Jason posted that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like he didn't really consult that with me, so I'm not sure what's the
basically
background.
what I would like to figure out, because it's been a while since we've had ZSF come up in with people in the Arborist call. With my zip editor hat on, I wanted to confirm whether or not you plan to have any of the ZSF zips ready for the deadline on Tuesday for potential inclusion in NU6, specifically meaning potential activation concurrently with the network halving. You don't have to answer that right now if you don't know the answer, but the deadline for zips that people want to activate with concurrently with the network halving in November is Tuesday, and the drop dead for the zips being absolutely finished is 2 weeks after that. So if the intention is to target ZSF for a network upgrade in early 2025, then you're not subject to those deadlines and you don't have to worry. But if you are trying to get it ready for that point, then those deadlines are in play. So
yeah, I'll discuss this with Jason, but I think the last time we discussed this, we were not targeting NU6. We didn't think that's realistic, and we also were discussing whether or not we'll wait for Zcash D deprecation actually, because we don't have an implementation of that started. So
those are both conversations that would be good to have, probably in the R&D Discord. Definitely the second one, in terms of like knowing how much of a delta the ZSF stuff requires and whether it is too much of an implementation burden to be able to add into Zcash D. But the NU6 thing is the main one to establish. So yeah, if you can just we put it this way, we will presume that if there isn't a zip submitted by the deadline on Tuesday, that there isn't an intention there, but I wanted to make sure that that was an active decision rather than a reactive decision.
Yeah, I understand. I'm pretty confident we were not targeting NU6. I'll discuss it with Jason just to make sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, just Jason has communicated on the forums that the Zcash Sustainability Fund will not be ready in time for NU6.
Okay. I had missed that update. That must have been the last couple of days. Great. That basically answered my question. Okay. So that will, that has knock-on effects for what will be in NU6. From a simplifying perspective, that is great.
Cool. Any other questions or comments regarding, sorry, I've accidentally switched to the Sustainability Fund?
Maybe I'll just mention, there was a post by Jason a few days ago. We were thinking about changing the name of Zcash Sustainability Fund to something more friendly. So if any of you guys have any suggestions or you want to participate, we'd be grateful.
One of the two hardest things to do in computer science.
Right.
Naming things. Okay, let's move on to ZSAs. And we have both Vivek, I think, and Jonathan here. So I'll leave it up to you guys who wants to take the lead.
So, yes, like I'll give the main updates. So I guess like we had this pull request on Zcash node encryption. Like to the upstream, and we got a review from Strad recently. So thanks, Strad. We've started like working on responding to the comments there, and we'll probably like get back to you, either change the code or discuss it in our meetings.
Yep.
So that's one thing. The other stuff, like we've been working on like Libra Zcash and Orchard, like both the crates, making sure we have like all the V7. I mean, we are moving things to V7 as the NU7 as the general name, or, and we've tried to sort of put things behind the feature flags with a Zcash unstable equals NU7 feature flag is what we've kept things, so that all our ZSA work can like soon start to be merged in with those feature flags there to keep them separate. Yeah, we've also like worked on the test vectors, the Zcash test vectors that were mentioned earlier. We created one set which just separated out the Orchard ZSA from the rest of the Orchard test vectors, and we have that ready for review. We've been working on the ones that also change the transaction format as which will then match the implementation in Libra Zcash. So that's largely done. We are just like cleaning up some code, making improvements, stuff like that. And yeah, we'll be adding a new pull request for that subsequently when that's ready. So we've also done some work on Halo 2. I think there's been stuff that we've been doing where there's been some standalone enhancements to Halo 2, which generalize the lookup range check and things like that. So I don't remember if I don't think we've put out the PR to upstream yet. I don't remember if that's happened, but yeah, I think we are like reviewing it properly inside our team, and then so if it's not out yet, it'll be out in a short bit. What else? Yeah, right. Just for information for the zips, we had like our earlier pull request for the zips merge some months ago. So we've opened a new pull request. It's pull request 854, and that'll be like the place for further changes, things that we correct or improve in the zips going forward. Yeah, and I guess like on Zebra, we've been we've had the Zcash transaction testing tool, so we've been updating it to allow it to support the new V7 transactions, and yeah, like the work on Libra Zcash and Orchard sort of helps support that as well. So that's, I guess, the main points of the update. Yeah, I don't know if John might have something or not.
I can add that can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add that we started the work on 2 new zips, which are one user control on receiving transactions. So this is the ability to refuse a transaction if you don't want to receive the funds. It's very similar to liberated payments and paying with links, and it's in the same area of work. And we've started working on the verified encryption, which is the ability to have an issuer of an asset get encrypted to them details of the transactions of that asset. This is, of course, maybe one of the only features that we've done that are not centered around keeping privacy, but rather it's centered around allowing the adoption of ZSA for stablecoin issuers. So that the zips for that are being worked on. Like we started working on them a while back, but we got the acceptance for and a date to submit them officially soon. The goal of submitting them early, before we even start implementing any of them, is to get direct feedback from all of the community. So, but in particular from the zip editors, to see, that we're not missing cases and to react on a concrete proposal. There's a whole conversation about it in the forums. We know that we need to go back there and answer some of the questions. I had a chat yesterday with Zuko on some of those features. Haven't spoken to Zuko for a while, and the entire the question about how fast can we have ZSAs themselves deployed is present in everyone's mind. So we really hope that that NU7 is not very far behind NU6, so that the work can be used by the community, and hopefully with an impact on the usefulness for the whole ecosystem.
Dara.
Yes, so I made my opinions about this feature in general clear at the ZK Proof 6. I think the video for that is probably online, but in general I'm opposed. And the main reason is that I believe it creates a honeypot for the issuer keys that are used to control access to the this additional data encrypted to them. The question I wanted to ask specifically is more of a technical one.
Just one thing, I think you reacted to that in the ZCon 5 online conference, is that correct?
I think it was both at
Okay.
It might have been both at ZCon 5 and ZK Proof 6. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, the first time was at ZCon 5. But I wanted to ask a technical question, which is that so if the verifiable encryption is only used to provide essentially a backdoor for the some party associated with the issuer or decided by the issuer, then any potential selective disclosure benefits of that are not available to other Zcash users. It's not technically necessary for that to be the case. I mean, you could have verifiable encryption that could be used more generally and would work for any viewing key. So I think that's not compatible with the approach that was described at ZCon 5 and ZK Proof 6. So can you explain why you've taken that approach?
Right. Yeah. Now I recall that you reacted to Pablo's talk on ZK Proof 6.
That's correct.
I remember now. Yes. So if I understand correctly, you would find a sort of benefit to having these types of techniques applied to selective disclosure, where it's like fully consented by the user. And
so
not,
the devil is in the detail, right? If there's in practice any form of coercion of users to that in order to use this asset at all, they need to give up their keys, then that's different from genuine consent. But just on the technical question of tying the verifiable encryption to the compliance feature, let's call it that. I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, I was actually planning on asking you for one-on-one to get your full view and to go deeper there.
Yeah,
I think it's way past time, so let's do that. But generally speaking, I mean, at Kedit, we're like fully aware that this is not your regular type of zip where it's going like it's adding to the benefit that users get in Zcash and don't get anywhere else. Zcash is unique in that sense that you have like deep privacy, and then you start taking away from it, if at all. This is contained in a particular asset, so this is not it doesn't have to be looked at or anything of the sort by the general Zcash users.
It's more complicated than that, because let's say that a regulator sees that this feature is available for some assets. What's to stop them saying, will shut down Zcash unless you apply it to all assets, including ZEC.
The same thing that stops them from stopping Zcash today from functioning, which is it's not practical to enforce something on an ecosystem that doesn't want that feature to be there. So I believe that nobody is capable of moving on ZEC in a way that is accepted by ZEC ecosystem, by the Zcash ecosystem. I think that when you do an isolated additional functionality, then that is a different beast. And in a way, this additional functionality is the most the strongest declaration you can give to law enforcement that this community is concerned with having legitimate uses on the platform be the main use, and is trying to send a signal to non-legitimate uses that they're not welcome. But again, that's something I think we've discussed on stages, off stages.
Yeah, and I would push back on the implication. I'm not sure whether you meant to make this implication that having complete, full, and not in any way backdoored privacy is in any way not legitimate. It is legitimate to want to protect yourself from the surveillance state.
I'm in this ecosystem for that reason. Yeah. I think you cannot have the privacy freedoms that you are building if you don't have full privacy. And I think that the fact that you consent to use or not use the assets preserves that fundamental freedom. The illegitimacy is of criminal use, which we as an ecosystem developer on our side, we don't have access to viewing the bad uses. There's a distortion that makes it viewable only from a tiny window from law enforcement side. We don't see any of it, but again, that's you will not find an implication for me that privacy itself is illegitimate. On the contrary, it's what we need to push, and having messages that send away bad uses on these islands of assets, I believe is a means for that same end.
I mean, part of the contrary view is that surveillance features are not only used for criminals. I mean, only recently there was a proposal in the UK to monitor the bank accounts of people claiming benefits, and this would have hugely impacted disabled people in particular. The proposal was basically shot down, partly because the current government doesn't seem as though it will have a long time in power, but the party that is likely to win the election is not particularly left-wing either, and they may resurrect some part of these proposals. And so we cannot assume that surveillance in general, by a state or otherwise, or by hackers who have been able to compromise encryption keys, we can't assume that that is only used against criminals.
I agree, but again, when you apply these things to assets that are backed by assets that already are under scrutiny of government, then this argument goes back to, for real strong privacy, use ZEC, and for practical, non-volatile, but not private from the government asset, you hopefully will be able to use other means. But I do want to have all your views on the underlying technology as well, also because this is going towards a zip very soon. So let's continue this part, at least parts of this conversation offline.
Yeah, this
one
feels
more-
very
one more
much
thing.
like going way off the the reservation in terms of an arborist call. Perhaps if people want to continue this discussion, we can do so at the end and just but perhaps we can move on with with any more updates or announcements. If that's
One more
okay,
very,
please.
very short point, one sentence. It needs to be post-quantum if you're going to have any keys that give access to more than one user's data, because it will be a disaster if some kind of centralized compliance mechanism got broken by quantum computers.
Okay.
Yeah, duly
We
noted.
can return to this as part of the open discussion if people want to stay on. But for now, I believe the last remaining item on the agenda is any open announcements. So if anybody has any announcements that they want to share, please raise your hand now. Okay. Otherwise, I'll say the next Arborist call will be on the 11th of July during the later time slot. And now we can return to the open discussion, and coincidentally, Dara still has their hand raised. But in terms of listening to updates, people can depart now if they want to.
I lowered my hand. I didn't have anything more to say specifically on that, but I am interested in other people's opinions. I haven't heard too much about what other people think about Kedit's proposal.
I'll share my views on it. I think that we face an increasingly encroaching regulatory environment where access to Zcash is being nibbled away, and we have to decide how we're going to deal with that threat effectively to Zcash adoption. For me, a key factor is whether this is an opt-in or a mandatory feature. And my understanding is that it is entirely an opt-in feature, i.e. the person or entity that is issuing the ZSA gets to choose whether or not this feature is enabled or not. I also think it's important that it be clear to users whether or not this feature is enabled or not. And beyond that, I think that to my mind, Zcash is about permissionlessness, and I'm not as concerned, I think, Dara, as you are about the potential for a government forcing us to do something, because certainly in the United States you can't compel speech in that way.
I mean, there are other levers of power. There's going after developers. There's putting choke points on the exchanges so that yes, in principle, ZEC might sort of stay free, but you can't interoperate with the existing financial system using it. I mean, there are plenty of ways in which people can, in which the surveillance state can effectively get what it wants and squeeze out the use of actually private money. And in general, I think this kind of feature is helping them.
Any other comments or views or observations?
Also, maybe it shouldn't be called a feature.
I think, yeah, I think this is absolutely a discussion that should take place and should incorporate as wide a range of views from across the Zcash ecosystem. I think it's really important that we don't end up in a situation where well, I think a decision about whether or not to implement this needs to be taken transparently, rather than through any sort of feet dragging or anything like that. So I think there does need to be a broad discussion about it, and hopefully all views can be shared and heard, and hopefully we'll be able to reach a consensus about whether or not it should be implemented.
There is a interesting sort of governance question here, which is, you know, ZCG has opted to fund this work, you know, essentially without there being community consensus as to whether or not it would ultimately be desired by the community in a larger sense. That's not something that's unique to this situation. You know, the organizations, you know, we hope that the individual organizations, ZF and ECC, are you know, paying to do development on things that that are approved of by the community in general. But this is kind of a unique item from that perspective, in that for, I guess, the first time, this is the community choosing to fund something that that will potentially contract the privacy of naive users. We have generally in the past tried to protect naive users from things that might impact their privacy, but this is kind of going the opposite way, where a less informed user might inadvertently expose themselves to surveillance because of a feature that's being added.
Extremely good point.
Yeah, sorry, I'm writing and I need to stop writing so I can answer. I agree with this point, actually. It's true. It's a risk that naive users would be exposing themselves to scrutiny from the issuer. I do believe that there is the same type of risk with any stablecoin, which is that the fact that the underlying assets are held by the issuer means that that actually the tokens they hold are not really direct value, but an MOU, sorry, an IOU on the underlying asset if they go to redeem it. But it's true that that different from what existed in the past, this is something that goes not in the direction of added privacy for the user of that particular asset. I don't know what to do with that fact, but from the reason why we thought it would be interesting to add these features is the trade-off of signaling that since we already have the issuers being under a jurisdiction, let's use that fact to have, you know, let's push that fact all the way to its conclusion, which is the issuer is basically a different participant than the rest of the ecosystem. But yeah, you're right. It's a different departure from past features. I would say that for years, most of the Zcash blockchain was running on transparent addresses, and most users were believing that they have privacy when they didn't have. But that was
that's a
corrected.
separate problem.
Yeah, but that was corrected.
And it's still a problem.
So,
yeah, it's still a problem. The one thing that I'll point out is that in terms of deployment of resources, and again, this is kind of getting to the government question, the governance question. The choice to deploy this feature for use with stablecoin issuers is at the expense of, say, deploying, potentially advancing work on. I know Dodger is very enthusiastic about shielded programmability. With shielded programmability, you get the option to start having.
But it's not, though, because there isn't shielded programmability proposed on the table by any group of developers. But I actually checked that with the grants committee. I asked them because the grant initially was
I
proposed to be implemented as well. This is just the zips of that grant, so we phased it so that there's the discussion on the feature will be on a concrete proposal rather than the titles. But there's not an alternative use of those funds from what I'm hearing.
I don't think it's a strong argument, but what I have my hand up, and what I wanted to say is, first of all, it's not necessarily just the issuer that gets this information. It's anyone who has the keys, and specifically the decryption keys. So I haven't heard of any plan to use threshold decryption. Why is there an assumption that the keys will be held by the same entity that is authorizing issuance? Because that's clearly a conflation of two different authorities. And yeah, those are the two main things I wanted to say.
I think
even if it is the same organization, you would, just for security compartmentalization, you would want to have different people associated with authorizing issuance and with being able to access the Grapho funds.
Yeah, I think when discussing the feature from a high level, we present it in its most controversial version, which is, if you don't trust the issuer, you don't get close to that particular asset. But of course, from there you can start adding, practical implementations that make it way less dangerous. Still, if there's like a collusion or bad key management or things like this, from the perspective of the user, their transaction was compromised.
So in the best possible case, it's not going to be just the issuer, because the surveillance state in any particular country can order the issuer to give them the keys and not tell anyone.
No,
that's true in the US.
That is the basic assumption, is that the viewing key is shared with a bunch of law enforcement agencies that.
Right, so it's misleading to just say that it's the issuer.
But that's not what's going on in the proposal that you will see. The assumption from the user perspective is that there's processes that influence the issuer to disclose upon those processes completing the content of all relevant transactions. Possibly the processes are very wide, and possibly the transactions are all the transactions. That's there's not going to be any misleading on that. The privacy in that island of functionality in that asset is very, very far from what you get in ZEC. The ability for Zcash to nevertheless hide the transactions from everybody else on the network is an added benefit that distinguishes that type of stablecoin on Zcash from any other stablecoin on any other system, which makes it an unfair advantage for that stablecoin in the race among stablecoins. But from the perspective of a user that doesn't trust the issuer or the authorities that could influence the issuer, you're again right. It's not a private transaction whatsoever, and it's very clear in the proposal, I believe, and it will be clear in any case in the ZIC.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean,
this essentially turns these into we will have with ZSAs added a new shielded or a new set of shielded asset pools. And then this essentially is proposing to add a new set of effectively transparent asset pools.
If you will.
I mean, actually, I think it's worse if a pool is sort of implied to be private to anyone except the law enforcement and issuer. And in fact, the keys end up getting leaked because we know that even intelligence agencies can't actually keep secrets very well. So obviously the Snowden leaks, they leaked a ton of information that the NSA was highly incentivized to keep secret. So I don't see that creating this big honeypot of a key that will give you access to the whole transaction graph. I don't see that that's a sensible thing to do.
I wanted to also push back a little bit on John. You said that this doesn't conflict with in terms of opportunity cost with opportunity cost of working on other things in general. You know, the work that will go into these zips and so forth is work that could go into again, I'll mention shielded programmability and that as a gateway to algorithmic stablecoins. We have some examples of algorithmic stablecoins that have performed pretty well over the past several years in terms of maintaining their stability. They are not tied to single assets, but there is absolutely an opportunity cost in sort of choosing to pursue this avenue, even if it's just, you know, doing the research and writing the zips.
Maybe if there were teams out there that were proposing what you're describing. Unfortunately, what Dara said earlier is very true. There's one of the levers of pressure that governments can have is go after developers, and the piling on the side that pushes towards you know, the usability of stable coins with without regards to any potential misuse. It's Kedit is unable to take on such tasks. I don't believe that there's many teams out there that are capable from like let's say a legal exposure perspective to take on such a task. Maybe there are, but I haven't heard that like in practice arriving at the table of ZCG. And what we're suggesting to the community and ZCG and have suggested is start making concrete steps to reinforce Zcash robustness as an ecosystem by demonstrating that where it makes sense, which is again where assets are being backed by assets that are already under some regulatory purview. So where it makes sense to demonstrate that that the ecosystem itself is financing those features. It's a huge statement. It's not a small statement, but I'm actually eager. I'm hearing that people are that there's going to be more things coming up soon for the Zcash ecosystem. I'm actually eager to see where the grants are being, what proposals arrive and what is built next. I think there's a gazillion things that can be built, and I wanna see those things built. Not all of them, Kedit as a company can come and say, hey, we'll do it, because we only have so much, budget of involvement to dedicate to some of those features. I don't know if it's clear what I'm saying, but I believe that there's features that could be built with that financing, even with the current Zcash, price. Beautiful features, but we can't propose many of them.
Arya?
I'm skeptical of stablecoin issuers joining the Zcash ecosystem if they're not able to satisfy their own compliance requirements. But I also share Chris and Dara Emma's concerns around the safety of doing this in a good way, and I'm not sure there is a good way to do it. So we need to be very careful here, I think.
Let's look at the zips and see if we propose a good way or not. Like that's part of the reason why I want to have those talks with Dara.
Okay,
Chris,
I'll try and break it.
Chris, your hand's still up. Did you have something else?
Oh no, sorry.
Okay.
Used to that getting lowered automatically.
Any other thoughts, questions, points to be made here? Okay, I think, or any other open discussion topics that somebody would like to bring up? All right, I guess we'll leave it there. Thank you all for joining. We'll get this up on YouTube shortly. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, everyone.